Hello, and welcome to another episode of the B2B Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Nils, and today my guest is Ian Campbell. Ian, welcome to the show.
Hey, Nils, thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure, Ian. I'm super excited. You are the author of this incredible book called The Value Sale, and I was really intrigued by this. And from the first page that I opened up and read, I was hooked. And it had to do with the story about selling alligators. And I thought that might be a really good place for us to jump off, because it just kind of positions everything we're going to talk about with regards to selling value so nicely. So would you share a little bit about what this alligator story is?
Sure, yeah, the most absurd example. But if I told you that you could make money by raising baby alligators in your bathtub, would you do it?
No way.
Right.
Baby alligators. I got kids, I got dogs, I got my own hands to think about. Like, why would I want to put baby alligators in my bathtub? No way.
Right, of course. That's the immediate answer is no. But what if I told you you could make $5 million a year raising baby alligators in your bathtub?
Then I'm going to have some more questions for you and be like, whoa, wait a second. Hang on. You piqued my interest. Maybe this could work.
Right. And there is a number higher than that where your spouse will tell you it's a great idea, and even your kids will think you're a genius. And the whole point of using that as an example is that I never told you anything about the product. I mean, you instantly saw the downside, which is it's probably a bad idea to have baby alligators in the bathtub. Kids might play with them and get hurt. But I didn't say they make fun pets. They're better than having a watchdog. It's a really good alarm system. No, I didn't tell you anything about it. All I told you was, if you could make money raising baby alligators, would you do it? And there was a number where you said the ROI makes sense. Absolutely, I'm going to do it. And there is a number above which you're going to say, where do I get more baby alligators? Because I want to do I want as many baby alligators as I can. So think about that as a sales funnel. I didn't push you through the funnel. You pulled yourself right through to the bottom because you saw the value. And that's really the point of value. If I can show value, I can sell anything. And that's why the alligator example is so absurd, but it's so true, because there is a number where we'll all raise baby alligators in our bathtub.
And the health department's going to have a whole lot of challenges when that comes up. Okay, so you mentioned the ROI piece there, and everybody has their own number of what that would mean to them. And, in this case, we're talking about very hard, real ROI, as in, well, we don't even know the cost yet, actually, just the return. There is some number, $5 million a year. Okay, cool. That's cold, hard cash. That's like real, it's indefensible. You know exactly what that means, and you could immediately see how that would impact your life. So how do we take the same premise and apply it to things that are less concrete, right? Sometimes we go about our life and we have to make decisions about investing in training or investing in education or investing in something else, where there's not necessarily one direct end result in a sales transaction that you get $5 million a year, but those things happen all the time. So how do we quantify ROI in a more vague kind of a scenario?
Right. And that really gets to what's a good benefit and what's a bad benefit. And a good benefit is just what I said. If I hand you $5 million a year, you're happy. That's cash that you can touch. You can see that. You believe it. People will often think about benefits as hard and soft. And I don't ever think about it that way anymore. If anything, say direct and indirect. They're directly achievable or indirectly achievable. It's sort of the number one rule is never say hard and soft, because the only thing you do is get someone to say, well, we don't count soft benefits. And then what did you do? You killed your deal. You're done, right? So that's good. Let me just throw away half of the potential benefits before I even start by calling them soft. Just call them indirect. They're direct and indirect. Okay. But a more sophisticated way to think about them is not two buckets, direct and indirect, but think about them as 4 buckets: first order, second order, third order, and fourth order. So a first order benefit is what I just offered you with the alligators. If you raise baby alligators, I will give you $5 million. Okay. You trust me, it's very emphatic, I'm going to do it. That's a believable number. So it's 100% believable. There's no variation. $5 million. It's not 5,000,001. It's not 4,999,000. It's $5 million. An actual number with a real believable statement behind it. It's going to happen. That's a first order benefit. So you can see in a business case, that's a great benefit. I love that. Right?
Oh, it's huge.
Now, a second order benefit has a hedging word in it. I expect you'll get 5 million a year from it. You should plan on 5 million a year. Most people get 5 million a year. How much do you believe 5 million? It's up or down a little bit. So, it's sort of like my daughter says, I cleaned my room or I plan to clean my room. Well, I plan to clean my room has less emphatic statement behind it. Not 100%, right? So all of us who have kids know the difference. So that would be called a second order benefit. It's highly likely to happen, but it has a hedging word in it. I plan, I hope, we intend, something like that. We will close a factory. We plan to close a factory. Not as
Hmm.
strong. And you can see what I'm doing is I'm bringing down the credibility on that, and I'm sort of spreading out the variability. 5 million plus or minus a million is what you'll make from those alligators. Okay, it's not the same. Okay, that's a second order benefit. A third order benefit is an increase in productivity. So you have a phone in your hand, you have a mobile phone in your hand, we all do, right? So if I asked you, how much more productive are you with that phone? You'd look at me and say, beats me. I don't know. Right?
Yeah,
And
I don't
that
track that.
and that's the direct way to ask the question. It's the worst way to do it, right? So I'm making you more productive. How much more productive will you be if we give you this new CRM system? You'll say, I have no idea. Now, when you get to a third order increase, a third order benefit, it's an increase in productivity. So first step is, does the person believe it's going to happen? So you ask a question, are you more productive with your phone? Yeah, sure, right? The second part of the question is, does the phone touch you? It's your phone, it's in your hand, so it directly impacts you. So you're the one who's influenced by it. The CRM system directly influences the salesperson who uses it. Okay. So it is a direct relationship between the person and the application. I'll tell you why this is important when we get to fourth order. Okay. So now I have two ways to ask that question. How much more productive will you be? I don't know, right? But I can ask it another way, and this is the clever part. Ask it as, are you at least 5% more productive with your phone?
Hmm.
Sure. Is it 6%? Could it be 7? Now, realistically, all we're doing is walking somebody up that curve. Some people will be 20%, some people will be 5. But if you come out and say, we have benchmark data that shows the data point is 10%, gets me nowhere. The only thing a benchmark data average does is tells me that half the people think the number is too high and half the people think the number is too low, but nobody believes the number. If you use a benchmark data point, 100% of the people will think you're crazy because nobody's going to believe it. It's either too low or too high by some amount, but it's never right. Nobody ever believes it because mathematically it's not right. There's nobody on the line. Everybody's one side or the other. So that's why benchmark data can be really hazardous. What you would want to say is, look, the people that are using our phones or using our new CRM system, their salespeople tend to be between 5 and 15% more productive. Big part of that bell curve. How much more productive do you think you'll be? Walk them up the curve. Could it be 5%? Could it be 7? Now, this gets back to the original point, which is with any business case, which is we're not trying to build the perfect business case. We're trying to justify a decision. So if you're just trying to justify a decision, this is an art. We're not framing it. So don't make it perfect. Make it good enough to close the deal or move forward whatever you are. All right. So that's a third order benefit. And the third order benefit is that trick is don't use a benchmark data point, but ground the customer or the prospect, whoever you're talking to, with a range. Okay. A fourth order benefit, that really distant one, is that story. Because you've got this new CRM system, your salespeople are more productive. True, third order benefit. And because they're more productive, they're happier. And because they're happier, they're less likely to quit. And because they're not quitting as much, I don't have as much employee turnover, so I can reduce my hiring costs. Well, yeah, I'd throw that out. Like, don't even bother talking about that distance story. So if it starts to turn out to what we call a disconnected benefit, and another good one would be, I'm selling you an acorn. You can plant the acorn, build a tree. From the tree, you can make wood. From the wood, you can make a house. Okay, I'm not selling you a house. I'm
I'm not
selling you an
selling a house.
acorn.
Right,
Right.
right.
So once you start, it doesn't matter. I don't care if you have another customer that can say, yes, we did it before. Doesn't matter the next person would, because the next person is going to make firewood. And now your whole
Hmm.
story's out the door, right? It does out the window. So careful when you start talking about big stories. Those are those distant benefits, but think of those benefits as something really believable. I cut a number, something pretty believable. I intend to cut a number, an increase in productivity, which is still good, or kind of a distant influence of something. And that's where things like advertising become so much more difficult. And there's another way to look at advertising. And you could say, what's the ROI from advertising? Or what's the most effective way to advertise given that I have to advertise. So don't
Mhm.
necessarily look at it as, can I get an ROI from advertising? Because that's always the silly question in a way. Well, how do you know? You
Yeah.
don't. It's nothing. Okay, so don't. Right. But then what I do know is it's like fuel economy in an airplane. I can get great fuel economy if I turn off the engines. Okay,
Not
right?
gonna have some, yeah, so they're gonna have some other implications, but
Right.
yeah,
But
technically, yeah.
as a pilot, you sort of realize that I need the engines to run. So let's think about a better way to get fuel efficiency as opposed to just turning off the engines, because that's just sort of a silly way to do it long term.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
as a manager, you sort of know I got to advertise. I have to advertise. So what are my different options for doing it? Anyway, going
Okay.
on about
So
that.
so the first order and second and third are where it's at. Right.
Right.
Once you get into the fourth order, we're talking like just too far of a disconnect for most people. And we do see that consistently across the board, and especially in advertising and things. And sometimes it's too big of a leap. Is that right? That the fourth order we should stay away from when trying
It's
to sell it on the value play.
Yeah, and it's too big of a leap. It's also potentially it's going to weaken your business case. So
Yeah.
if you think about most of the deals or most of the situations you're in, there are usually one or two things that drive it. There are two or three things that support it, and that's it. If you have more than five things, five benefits you're talking about, you made a mistake. Guarantee it 100%. So the temptation is to throw as much on the pile, but realize that the weakest thing you talked about, that's the thing that's going to screw up your deal.
Ah,
So don't talk about it if you don't have to. If you really need that distant story to close the deal, to close the situation, make it go forward, maybe step back and rethink and say, why are they using it? And sometimes it's nothing more than just saying, why do they want to advertise with me? Why do they want to do this? What kind of benefits do they want to get? And let's talk to those benefits as
yeah.
opposed to push as much as I can on the table. Let's just pick and choose what we're going to use to try to make it as strong as possible. And strong means fewer words, not more.
Well, yeah. If I if I had time, I'd write you a shorter letter. Right.
Right.
We want to be in the spending time to write a short letter in these cases. And regardless of whether you're selling a deal or selling a program or selling an initiative or selling an investment of time or whatever it is, these same principles apply, right? I
Right.
mean, it doesn't matter what the thing is that is being exchanged or negotiated on.
You're selling yourself too. How can I provide value to you is really just understanding the different ways that they can receive value. And one of the examples I use in the book is you may think you sell screwdrivers, but if they're using it to open paint cans, you got to pivot and say, I sell a great paint can opener because that's how they're going to use it. Don't talk about how great it is as a screwdriver because they don't care about that part. So sometimes it's listen a little bit and then feed it back to them and say, what are those top two benefits? What are they really trying to do out of this phone call, or this meeting, and then you can understand how to best present your product. Another thing which sometimes makes sense or doesn't is breadth and repeatability. How often are they going to use you, and how many people are going to interact with you? And that the more breadth and repeatability, the more time something's used, the greater the potential ROI. So breadth and repeatability, if you just do a quick litmus test and say, well, they're going to only use this once by one person, ROI is not going to be that great. Your price better be really low. If it's going to be used all the time, it's an ad campaign they're going to use everywhere. It's going to be, well, now you've changed the numbers and now they'll see the benefits a lot more. So breadth and repeatability can be a big determinator of just sort of what the ROIs they'll get out of it as opposed to whether you have a good product or not.
It's really interesting. I want to come back just for a second to the previous point about the talking about the value that the customer will get. So let's say they're an existing customer, right? And perhaps there's an opportunity to continue to engage with them, or perhaps you want to sell another part of your solution to them, or whatever the situation is. But they're an existing customer. Now, the company as a whole kind of has this idea of the value that they provide. Now, the customer might have a different perception of the value that they get, all of the screwdriver versus the paint can opener, like you were just saying. So what is your recommendation on understanding that value from each customer? Is that something that the company should be doing in every single customer situation, is asking the question, how do you get value from our solution? Or is that something that is, kind of just more general that people try to suss out if they can? How would you approach that?
Well, in a perfect world, that's exactly what the account manager is doing on a regular basis. And I sort of talk about how do you supercharge your reference customers? Take them to lunch and talk about how they're using, just how are you using my product? And all you have to do as that account manager is to reframe it in a numbers point of view. So just, oh, we're using your product, we're able to reduce our IT costs. Really, how much do you think you reduced your IT costs? Oh, at least 10%. Now, I don't really care. I say, does the account manager care? You pretend you care. You really don't care. What you really care about is that now that 10% is in their mind. So the next time you use them as a reference, you say, by the way, they got 10% decrease in IT costs. Here, talk to them about how they got that. The more you can pull that out of them through every conversation, the sad part about references or about conversations like that is it's usually we liked working with them. Our sales guy was really nice. Oh, the contracting was really good. That's not worth anything to me. Not if you want to make money next time, that does you no good, right? Take them to golf, but during that golf game when they play, talk about the way they got benefits. And there are only two. There are only going to be two big ones, three small ones, that's it. But the more you sort of add a little bit of a foundation to it, it's nothing more than just reframing it. So if you're in a perfect world, you're talking to them all the time about that and they already know. In an imperfect world where you sort of need it in a rush, you could call them up and say, boy, I know you're using it to decrease the cost of your advertising spend. Can you talk to this new customer about how much you've decreased the cost? Because I believe, didn't you say you decreased by 5 or 10% or something,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
number that
Yeah.
quantifies it? And the second you ground them in that number, the more they're just going to repeat it back and the better
Yeah.
they are as a reference. I don't care how good you are to work with. If you can if you can make me $5 million a year by selling me alligators, I don't care if you're a jerk. You can be the most obnoxious salesperson in the world. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me.
Right.
So, but
Right.
5 million, that matters to me. I'm going to notice that. So, the more you do that on an ongoing basis, and that just should be part of your regular conversation. And the more they see it, the more they're likely to upsell. Hey, we were able to save 10% of your IT costs in this department. What do you think about these other two departments? Could they get the same kind of savings?
Hmm.
Wouldn't that be helpful to your company now? But
Yeah.
as long as it's grounded in a number as opposed to hey, you like us, wouldn't they like us? It's so much easier when it's a number because a
Yeah.
number turns that funnel around and you get pulled through the funnel instead of pushing them through.
Well, and I also love the reframing piece because sometimes that's the example you shared there is, hey, you've gotten this great benefit. Would you talk to one of our other prospective customers and tell them about it? Sometimes the company or the person asking can feel like that's a big ask, like they have to do a lot of work. The reality is, if done your way, is you're actually giving them an opportunity to talk about how great of a result they got using your solution, which helps them feel really good. Right.
Yeah.
So you're actually doing a favor to them as opposed to asking them a favor. And it's a small shift, but I think it's a huge one. And it comes back to that reframing because customers naturally don't think in terms of like the hours of savings or the percentages unless they're asked in a strategic way, just like you were sharing there, and help them and you help them reframe it. But I think the opportunity is always there.
Well, and it's really important to do it when you have a subscription product
Yes.
because when somebody comes back and says, I just got the bill for Salesforce, which you're going to notice because it's Salesforce. And, it's either the customer puts their head down and says, yeah, we're locked into it. There's nothing we can do, which is not what you want to hear. Or they say, I was looking at it and our salespeople are at least 20% more productive. The time to close a deal has gone down by 15%. And because we have this common way of creating contracts, we've only got 10 different contracts. And now our sales guys say that the contracts are done. Salespeople say the contracts are done in 5 minutes instead of 2 hours. I've got some numbers. Now that CFO goes, okay, I'll go harass somebody
Yeah.
else
It's
because
it's
they're
it's
not going to do.
clear. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You pass the CFO test
Yeah.
very quickly.
Well,
Right.
CFOs are no people. In
Yeah.
general, the natural reaction for a CFO is no. Whatever it is, the answer is no. So
Yep.
if you can give them a financial reason, if you no, put it the other way, if I could tell the CFO that if I fired all of my employees and just raised baby alligators at each of their desks, I can make $5 million for each of these desks, then every rational CFO would say, fire everybody in the building.
Let's do it.
If
Yeah.
I don't
Let's
need
do it.
anybody here
Yeah.
if you can make that kind of return on each one of these cubes and desks. So yeah, CFOs are rational animals, and if you speak to that number, they'll go off and harass somebody else. But you
Yeah.
should be ready for that. Any kind of SaaS product, have those numbers right there so that you can defend your decision. Makes you look like a hero internally. So
Yeah.
you as the account manager are making your prospect, your champion, turn around and look like a hero internally and giving them the defense they need to be able to fend off anybody that might come and say, why are we
Yeah.
spending money on this again? You
Yeah.
got an
Yeah.
answer.
That's the worst. I've been on the receiving end of that. equation, but is a very difficult place to be if you are not talking numbers. And again, the customers won't come up with this on their own, but you can absolutely help them navigate it and give them a little bit of structure of which to fill in the blanks. And then all of a sudden, it's something they create on their own, which is awesome. All right, I want to put you on the spot here and ask you for some help in talking through the value equation when it comes to leadership development. This is an area I spend a lot of time in, and I run a program called the Leadership MBA. It's a 12-week program. It is designed to empower managers, directors, and VPs with the leadership tools to confidently handle any situation. Now, that is the big picture overall promise, is that I've got 12 different sessions that I take people through, and I empower them with this toolkit. They can solve an infinite number of leadership problems that are going to come up each and every day. Things related to personal leadership, how they use their time, how their mindset and psychology works, the team leadership, how they engage their team, run team meetings, how they build an inclusive team identity, communication leadership, how they communicate their value, their team's value to other people outside their team across their org, and performance metrics leadership, which is all about how they use metrics to drive performance. So I cover a lot of topics across a lot of different areas that are designed to be a toolkit, to be used at different points based on the situation. Right. So how, using the value sale, an approach that we were just talking about there, how do we think about how to take something as, you know, potentially third order as leadership development, because it's indirect to a lot of things, and focus on that in the conversations that I have with individuals as well as companies. I would love to get your input on how to do this, because I think it applies to a lot of situations a lot of people listening to this go through, which is might not be first order, maybe there's some second, but it's probably going to fit in that third order pretty big.
Yeah, and I can see people easily falling to the fourth order saying, well, I'm not sure because I'm training a manager and that manager impacts the employees. So what do we do? So there's really two ways to look at it. One way is to say, you're right, don't do any management training, which is the fuel efficiency in your airplane. Now, we all know that's a bad idea. It works for a very short amount of time and then it dies off. Also, we all realize that on the job training, we do management training here all the time at Nucleus, and we're constantly doing it. And on-the-job training works well for that one path that you're on, but managers face multiple paths and multiple challenges. So you have to realize that ongoing training is important, because keeping that toolbox filled with new tools is what it does two things. One, it gives them the tool, but it also gives them the confidence to be able to go forward in a situation, knowing that they have this toolbox. It's really a safety net. I'm making my safety net as big as I can, as opposed to just this thin little wire, by adding more tools to it, which means I'm more likely to run instead of tentatively walk. Maybe that's the right way to say it. So that's a good reason to have a broad toolbox like that. Now, I know I have to do it. So what's the most effective way to do it? Okay, I'll send them all to grad school, but then I'm going to lose them all. That's probably going to be not going to have the best ROI for me. Hope that they watch a couple of YouTube videos, may or may not have a good ROI, especially since you need a lot of back and forth to be able to get decent out of it. I can go with coaching. One-on-one coaching is another way to do it. We've actually done that here as well sometimes, with that fine tuning that some people might need. But no, it's funny. I teach it at Florida University here, and FIU, Florida International University, and a lot of that is around management tips and training and around ROI. Extremely valuable. So the thing is to say, look, this is a productivity gain. I'm going to make my employees more productive. What's the best way to make these managers more productive, since we know they have to do it? And I'll get two things out of it. One, I'll get greater confidence, greater effectiveness in the way they manage, and two, greater speed, because I'll have more confidence in what they're doing. And that's an increase in productivity. So you can look back and say, the negative sale, how we'd call the negative sale from a financial point, would say, if I only made them 1% more productive, what would that do for you? That's more than would cover the cost. In most cases, it's that kind of, I don't need to figure out what the real number is. I just need to have confidence that I know it's greater than 1 or 2%. Most companies have some form of talent management where they individually pick each person and say, what do I need to do? We do it here with every employee. Every employee, we've got a plan. What do I need to do to get them there? Now, do they listen to me? Yeah, we try. You do the best you can. But you have to do that, and that's all part of running a business. It's sort of, again, like advertising. You have to advertise. What's the most effective way to do that? Is it going to be a direct savings in cost? Maybe if you have outside trainers, it could be. You can cut some of your other costs and reduce the training costs. Is it a first order benefit? A second order benefit? Probably not. It either will happen or it won't. But a third order benefit is that sweet spot, and that benefit is increased productivity for the managers That comes out of two things. One, more effective as managers, and two, speed of being able to make decisions because of confidence. My gut off the top of my head is those are the places where I would look for the biggest benefit. And I think you're looking at a tiny percentage to make it worthwhile to go forward with any form of training. And boy, like I said, talent management is such a huge area for us as a research firm that I would say every company's got some form of talent management in place, even more so now where I can replace the low end stuff with a chat GPT kind of thing.
Yeah. Hmm.
You know, each person becomes so much more valuable because I need fewer of them. So making sure they're as good as they can be. And again, we do that all the time at this place because finding people is the toughest thing for me. So
Yeah. And that third order benefit, I think, is where it is. And I think something that I'll certainly take away from this is the quantification of that productivity increase and leading with the it doesn't have to be a benchmark, but it is a range. And I know from case studies and things I've done with previous people who've taken through all these tools, just how much of an impact it makes, whether it's saving time, whether it's bringing a team closer together, whatever the the end result is from the tool. Each one of the tools that teach provides a massive increase, and all of them together provides a huge increase. So I think that's an area where I can definitely focus more.
So that's one of those really easy things that anybody can do is survey their end users, survey your customers, and say what kind of results did you get out of that. So I would go back to the previous students and say, hey, how much more productive do you think you are? If you were to say you have a toolbox of management tools, by what percentage did it increase after you worked with us? How much better decision making? Better decision making is a tough one. So that would be a KPI, hard to put a number behind. But you could say overall, how much more productive do you really think you are? Is it 1%, 0.5%, 2%? How much better is your decision making? See if you can get a grounded number. I know one company that will survey their end users during their annual conferences. And just on these kind of numbers, you have 5 data points is more than enough. You don't need more than that. But a quick survey will give you so much great data that you can then use, at least to ground to the next person. So they say, our typical companies are 5 to 10% more productive, or 3 to 5, whatever it is. So you've got a number they can start with.
And that anchor is really important, because even whatever the number is or whatever the topic is, right? The typical result of seen is X, is 5%, is 10%. And again, like you said before, half of the people are above that number and half of them are below. But it gives a quantification, it gives something to anchor to without having to be just the general more productive.
Right. And I love an anchor as a range just when it comes to this, because usually whenever I say a number, whenever you say a benchmark number, people will push back immediately and say, how'd you get it? So to avoid that entirely, you say, we see between 3 and 7%. Let's talk about what it could mean for you.
So,
we see 5.
I was going to ask you about that, because the range, or the first question I would imagine is, how did you measure that? But if it's a range, it's a little bit different, and it's not as much, not going to be as, instead of it's 5%. No, how'd you get that? But if it's 3 to 7%, let's talk about what it could be for you. Then it kind of naturally flows. Is that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, the average shoe size is 8. Doesn't do me any good. The average shoe size is between 5 and 11. What would be right for you? No pushback.
That feels totally different. Yeah, because as soon as you say it's 8, it's like, well, how did you measure?
Who? Where?
Yeah,
is that North America? Is that what was it?
Yeah.
It's exactly what you get. What size company? Who was that? Did they do the same thing we do? Whenever you say a number, somebody picks it apart for whatever, because that's the game. The game is you pick apart whatever data point you have until you say, well, it doesn't apply to me, because it'll never apply to them, because you can always dissect it into something where it won't apply. That's why benchmark data is so terrible to use, because if you use it just as a number, you get nowhere. It's very rare that somebody says, oh, that fits me. No, it doesn't.
Yeah. So is it the term benchmark, or is it the absolute number that's the sticking point? Because could you have a benchmark that is 5 to 10%, whatever, and call that a benchmark? Or are you saying that it's just having a single number as opposed to a range?
That's exactly it. Don't have that single number. Always use the range. And all of our benchmark reports will say that. They'll say the range is between X and Y, with, of course, it tails off after that, and there's an expectation. But if we look at 2 standard deviations away, that's what it is, right? So the bulk of the people fall between 3 and 7%. That's what we've seen in our clients, with a few outliers. What do you think you would be. And then you've brought it down to a number. They've got an idea where to guess, because that's all they're trying to figure out. If they said 70%, then what? If I say, how much will you pay for this car? I don't know, right? Well, most people pay between 50 and 60,000 for the car. Okay, I'll give you 50, right? Or whatever it is. But now I've got an idea. Most people pay 55,000. Well, who's that? Who paid them? What do they? That just creates an argument.
That's really interesting. That's fascinating. I mean, it's such a small tweak, right? Going from an absolute number to a range, and then the range provides the boundaries, and then it allows you to turn the conversation back to them to ask a question about or guide them through the next step to help them figure out what's going to be appropriate for them.
I'll give you another really small tweak that can be really, really valuable. We talk about ROI all the time. So everyone says ROI, ROI. Don't. I'm going to tell you, don't. You can talk about payback first. How long until you cover your costs? If you talk about payback first, that's a number I can feel. So if I told you, hey, this new training program will cover its costs in the first 30 days, feel it.
Yeah.
This new training program has an 800% ROI.
Yeah, it's like a fictitious, whatever, you made that up.
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter what the number. I can say 247. I could show you the data. That's an intellectual number I can understand. I get my hands around it. But most people can't get their hands around that because it's not something I can feel. It's not a bad thing. It's just I feel 30 days.
Yeah.
I don't feel 300%. That's a good number. I don't feel it. I feel 30 days. And so the more you can talk about how long until you cover your costs. After that, now you're making money. In the first 30 days, it only takes 30 days to cover your costs, and then you're up. That feels fantastic. The other thing that does for you is when someone says, I'm going to spend 6 months thinking about this program, and you say, well, if your average person is 2% more productive, you would have covered your costs in the first 60 days.
There we go.
Why are we spending 6 months doing it when you could cover your costs in 2 months? And then if you don't like it, you could stop and you're still okay.
Yeah.
Because you cover costs. So
I like that.
That little tweak of don't lead with ROI, lead with payback and follow up with ROI is the better way to do it. That from a sales point of view, it's just received in a more positive light.
Yeah. And there's so much psychology in this. I love it. I nerd out on psychology all the time. And it's those little pieces, what you can feel, right? What hits home and what is going to just shift the focus, I guess, of the other person from the picking apart the number to figuring out where do I fit in this range that is the medium. And then, just like this, like I can feel 30-day payback. I can feel 60-day payback. I can't feel 800% ROI. That is just a pipe dream. Even if it's true, it's technically true. Nobody will ever believe it.
And think about you're selling through to somebody who's trying to get budget numbers. So they're going to say, why should we do this? And if they're the person on the page, the purse string says, why are we doing it? That person says, well, it's got a 300% ROI.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. But if they're sitting in an elevator, that elevator pitch with the CFO, the CFO says, why are we doing this? And they say, oh, it should cover its cost in the first 30 days. Worst case, another good trick is worst case. Worst case, it's 60 days. Done. Yeah. Don't talk to me anymore. Make it happen, right?
Yeah.
So it's such an easy pitch for them, for your champion when they turn around and then try to sell it internally. Covers costs in 60 days.
Okay, got it. So you talk in the book about the increased only being 3 real benefits. We've been talking about the increased productivity a lot as it relates to leadership and development. That is core piece there. There's also reduced costs and increased profitability. At what point, what is the decision criteria to figure out which of these is really going to be the best thing? Is it situation and product specific, or are there certain scenarios where one is going to be more appropriate than the others?
Sure. Well, it's always situation specific because again, that paint can versus the screwdriver for opening a paint can or the screwdriver using a screwdriver. So it's how the customer uses you that defines what it is that they're getting. But that's a really good that framework is a really good one from the top line. There are only 3 things I can do for a customer. I can either make their employees more productive, I can reduce cost, or as a byproduct of those 2, I can increase profit. Now, throw away increased profit because really that's a byproduct of the other 2. Sometimes you have to use it, but 99% of the time you don't. Okay. So if you just say everything I do as a product, as a company, anything I sell either increases productivity or reduces cost. That's all it does. That's it. So now when you talk about the features of your product, because typically a salesperson will talk about Well, here's all the things it does. Okay,
Yeah.
stop. What I'm trying to, I only do two things. I reduce cost, I increase productivity. So I'm going to increase productivity. And the way I'm going to increase productivity for you is we've got this new human interface that makes it easier to use. We've got these new links to other products. We've got this cleaner way to link your Word documents to our CRM system. Great. And by the way, it's now much more efficient. So because it's a hosted service, you'll be able to reduce your hosting costs, reduce cost. That's it. So everything you taught. So, but if I told you, hey, it's got a new human interface, what's that?
Okay.
What is
Yeah.
it?
What is that? Was
Yeah,
that? It's
why?
not
So,
linked to anything, right?
right.
And
So,
yeah.
so start with what you're going to do. I will increase the productivity for my for
Um,
you. How am I going to do that? With a new human interface, with a redo, with better links to connect to this other product, whatever it is. So ultimately, for training, I'm going to increase the productivity of your managers and of your employees. I'm going to do that because we're going to give all of these things to them.
wow, that's
I can
powerful.
also reduce your outside training costs because you won't have to spend money on an outside company. Now that I'm only thinking of those two buckets, I can start to take all the stuff and put it under those two buckets. It becomes a lot clearer
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
benefit is for the customer.
It is.
Otherwise, and it's terrible because I go to so many sales training meetings every year, and it's 1-2 days of training where maybe three where salespeople are in the room learning about all the features of a product, and the last thing they learn about is what those features are good for. Right. And really what you should say is, look, we only do two things. Let me show you all the different ways we're going to reduce the cost for our customers, all the different ways we're going to increase productivity. One day on reducing costs, one day on increasing productivity. Stop talking about features because those features only drive those two big benefits. And then
Wow.
those benefits fall into, first order, second order, third order, fourth order. Is it distant? Is it believable? So think about those are the big buckets. And then how believable are those buckets, meaning how much variability do I have? And once you think about it that way, you're really good. And the last thing would be to talk about the sales funnel and where it fits in the sales funnel. And if you think about value, often people will say, well, I don't want to talk about ROI until the customer says something, right? Most people sidestep that question until they really have to, and then they'll bring somebody in because they don't want to talk about it. And think about that sales funnel as having two sides. It's got the value side, which is now what we're talking about. It's got the marketing side that you already know. So I qualify a customer. I talk about how I deliver value. I talk about I talk deep dive into the customer, what the requirements are. I show other companies like them that have achieved value. I deliver a proposal. I show them their ROI. How do you deliver value? How have others achieve value? How will they achieve value? Three simple steps. But if you don't go through those three steps in the sales funnel, you get to the end and go, oh, you need a business case. Let me pull in some expert
Yeah.
to do that for you. And
Right.
then you
Right.
sit there for months wondering what the heck happened to your deal. Your deal
Wow.
died because somebody came in to do a business case that went off and made it a consulting project. Why would you do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, you take everything that is incredibly complex in selling via value, and you just made it incredibly simple. So I appreciate that so much, and really appreciate your insights across the board on my examples, but also these tips and strategies that anybody can use when you're selling anything, whatever it is, the project, the initiative, your next promotion, right? It's all a matter of how you sell. And if you sell via value, then there'll be a piece of cake. So Ian, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people get a copy of the value sale or connect with you and find out more about Nucleus?
So the value sales are available on Amazon, and we were a Wall Street Journal bestseller, so very happy about that. So please, you can get it there very easily. Go to thevaluesale.com I'm constantly putting up some new articles on that and more on things like IRR and what's bad about that, and a lot of more in-depth stuff that we didn't put into the book because it would have made it more of a finance book. And then you can always catch me here at Nucleus Research, where I'm the CEO. And it's just Ian at nucleusresearch.com. And happy to chat with everybody. I've got people who email me, so happy to respond to you guys or to anybody that has any kind
Wonderful.
of value question.
Awesome. Well, Ian, it's been a pleasure. We'll make sure to have all those links in the show notes as well, so everybody can get a copy. Highly recommend getting a copy of the book. It has been a fascinating conversation. Wonderful to meet you and spend some time with you. Thank you so much, and take care and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. Take care.